What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg. We like magic, and today I got a deck for you that's been on the fringes of standard since Ixalan came out, but it's been keeping a low profile for the most part. I guess, like, in Smash Brothers terms, if you're into that, it's kind of the Princess Peach of standard right now, you know, firmly, you know, bottom middle B tier, but just with one buff or one nerf to the competition, they can shoot straight to the top of the list. And I think now is a good time to bring some exposure to this deck, because Rivals of Ixalan is going to be coming out soon, and again, this deck gets like one or two decent pieces, and it's suddenly in the running. So today, we're going to talk about green-white aggro. Well, disclaimer, this is the jankiest looking aggro deck in standard, like, by a lot. When you first look at this list, you're like, man, how did this place in a tournament? But it's placed in multiple tournaments, so there is something there. And once you get to playing with it, you see it's got a lot of tricks, it's really combat focused, and it's a really fun deck to play that you can put together for super cheap. This deck is like well under $100. In fact, I think it's actually like slightly south of 75 on TCG Player right now. So it's the right price, and it performs a lot better than you might think just by taking a glance at it. So with that in mind, intro over. Let's go ahead and look at the creatures here, which we are playing 29 of. That is a lot of creatures, but I think there's a good reason to play a bunch of creatures right now. You know, against aggro decks, you can out-creature them in a way, you know, and against mid-range control decks especially, you overwhelm the amount of removal that they play. You know, there's a lot of good removal in this format right now, but this deck just has the philosophy that if you play enough creatures, it doesn't matter how much removal they have. So let's look at the one-drops first here, and we'll do these all at one time. We're going to play 2 copies of Sacred Cat, 3 copies of Legion's Landing, and 2 copies of Narnum Renegade. Well, the first thing I'll say, just looking at all 3 of these cards together, is that it's obvious from the jump that we don't have the best one-drops in terms of, like, pure power level or power toughness, for that matter. In the format right now. You know, obviously red and black do that really, really well, but our one-drops are good for other reasons. That being said, though, I think this is the first place we're going to look when it comes to improving this deck when Rivals comes out. You know, if we get a 2-power one-drop in either color, can easily slot that in for Cat or Narnum Renegade. Although, I will talk about Narnum Renegade for a second. You know, this is probably the most surprising card to see, at least in the one-drops. It doesn't see anywhere near as much play in standard as the other 2 cards, but Renegade's pretty good. You know, we don't have a whole lot of removal in this deck. We're really focused on combat interactions. We're willing to trade creatures in combat early, and we know, just as a matter of course, that some of our creatures are going to die in combat, especially in the early and mid-game turns. So Narnum Renegade is really, really easy to get the Revolt on and just drop its second main phase as a pretty big guy. And, you know, like I said, we don't have a lot of removal, but that plays into Narnum Renegade in a couple of other ways. Namely, what I'm talking about here is the fact that Renegade is intimidating on attacks or defense, you know. Really versatile in that way. It's just a really low investment for a reasonably high-power Death Touch creature that if it's swinging in, they kind of have to worry about what to block it with. And you can swing in with everything. You can still attack aggressively and leave up Narnum Renegade to block, and then they really have to second-guess what they attack with, because you'll be able to take out literally any ground creature that they swing in with that doesn't have Indestructible. And for 1 mana, that's actually really good. As far as our other 2 one-drops, even though these are somewhat proven cards in the meta, you know, they pop up in a lot of lists with, like, relative frequency. They're definitely, admittedly, not the most aggressive one-drops in the format either. But, you know, there's good stuff about them. Sacred Cat can pull double duty. It chump blocks super well. It's nice to have a creature that can play through wraths and removal and stuff like that. Good to have a resilient piece like the Cat. And Legion's Landing can flip very easily in this deck. You know, we're playing almost 30 creatures, so Legion's Landing can flip as early as turn 3 super easy. But now we're going to get into the real meat of the deck, and that's the 2-drop creatures. Virtually every version of this deck you'll find online, and literally every version that's top 32 or better in any tournament, plays 16 different 2-drop creatures. That's a lot of 2-drops. And you don't play a bunch of really good stuff, like thankfully Long Tusk Cub isn't in the deck. That's kind of awesome. And Glorybound Initiate isn't even in the deck. So let's take a look at what this deck does choose to play, starting with the Danto Vanguard at a 4 of. Let you in on a secret, this card is actually massively good. Like, it's impressed me a lot. You know, time and time again, it just overperformed in testing, and I wasn't sold on it at first, but the more you play with it, the more you really like a Danto Vanguard. You gotta respect it, you know? The ability to keep a creature around in this format is really, really desirable. Like, Indestructible's so good, it's the whole reason that people play, you know, cards that can kill Scarab God forever and get rid of Hazoret and stuff. That's because indestructibility, or the ability to recur over and over, is really fantastic. fantastic in this format right now, and especially against decks like Control. If you got a lot of Control in your local meta, this card is ridiculous, you know, because it can shrug off as many as 2 removal spells before you really even care in that matchup. You know, against Control, your life total is even more of a resource than it usually is, and the ability to just shrug off like Shock and Fatal Push and Harness Lightning and Abrade and Lightning Strike. There's a ton of different cards. Walk the Plank even. That like you can just pay the 4 life, and it seems steep, but it is definitely worth keeping your dude around attacking for another couple of turns and forcing them to draw into more removal. By the end of it all, you can 2 or 3 for 1 them if they really want to remove your Vanguard. We're also playing 4 copies of Adorned Pouncer, which is freaking insane when you eternalize it. You know, the last time I played with this was in a Cats deck. I'd forgotten how ridiculous the card is. You know, often your opponent doesn't necessarily want to kill it, especially if you've already got that 5 mana on board. You know, you'll swing in with it just daring them to kill it, so you can get a 4/4 double striker that you can then pump with multiple cards in the deck. You know, this card is really, really, really intimidating sometimes, and can just like go the distance. You know, a pump spell here, a pump spell there, and suddenly this thing is dealing your, you know, 3/4 of your opponent's starting life total. We're also going to play 4 copies of Merfolk Branchwalker in the deck, because it's like, it's just too much sauce on one card, you know? It's just 2 mana for something that can either get you card advantage, which is really nice, theoretically lower the land count, you know? There's really not a whole lot of cards that do that for just 2 mana in Standard. And even if you do get the card advantage off of it, it's still on curve, you know? 2 mana, 2 power creature is at least respectable and can trade in combat. But if you get the +1/+1 counter, you got a creature now that for just 2 mana can attack really aggressively at that mana cost, or can trade up really easily against other aggro decks. Just all of that on one card for only 2 mana is way too good of a rate to pass up. And to finally finish off these 2 drops, we're going to play 4 copies of Resilient Kenra, which is one of my favorite cards in the entire deck. But I was biased a little bit towards Kenra already. I have liked this card since the moment I saw it. It's great in like Stompy decks, and like as soon as Rivals comes out, I should probably make another Stompy deck, because I really think it's on the cusp, you guys. But anyway, back to what I was saying. In this deck, it's awesome too, because it's got a lot of really neat tricks. It's essentially a pump spell on a body that we can cast again later and become an even bigger pump spell, you know? So just being able to +2/+2 or +4/+4 anything in the deck is awesome, you know, even the lowly lifelinkers, very like on the bottom of the curve there, you know, making them 3/3s or 5/5s is really, really nice. Giving Narnum Renegade that boost, a Death Touch creature, that's really cool too. And oh my god, Adorned Pouncer, you know, if you can actually give, like, live the dream and get the achievement, you know, eternalize your Adorned Pouncer and then eternalize your Resilient Kenra and give it that +4/+4 boost, and suddenly you're swinging 16. It can and has happened multiple times, actually, in me testing this deck. That's not just a pipe dream, it kind of happens a lot. And just naturally, you know, without eternalizing them, just having a regular 1/1 Adorned Pouncer out, and then casting a regular Resilient Kenra and giving it +2/+2, suddenly you're swinging 6 just with that. So that is fantastic as well. And even with like a Danto Vanguard, you know, being able to give it indestructible and an attack boost when it swings in, plus the boost from Resilient Kenra, you're swinging in with a huge indestructible guy pretty easily. Just Resilient Kenra is literally always good. We're only playing 1 3-drop creature in the deck. You know, we can't afford to go too high up on the curve here. We're an aggro deck. So we're not going to play a bunch of 3 and 4 drops, but we are going to make room for 4 copies of Kinjali Sunwing. Seriously, Kinjali Sunwing. This thing is also actually awesome. It gives us an edge against other aggro decks, especially Ramanap Red, you know. It's really nice. This comes down turn 3, so regardless of whether we're on the play or on the draw, we can play it just before they get their Hazoret, and that is really nice. You know, Hazoret coming to play tapped is sweet. It demands, you know, Lightning Strike or a Braid, demands removal of some kind from that deck, or it's going to give us a really, really big advantage over the long game against other aggro decks. Just a fantastic piece against them. And even against mid-range, it's great. You know, it taps down Glorybringer, so it can't swing with haste and exert and kill one of our guys, take us by surprise. It's good against that deck too, and it again demands Harness Lightning from that deck, or it's just going to create a fair amount of value long game and allow us to swing in relatively unfettered without worrying about what's going to hit us. And to finish off the creatures, we're just going to play 2 copies of Kenra the True way up here at 4 on the curve, but this is one of the best creatures in the entire deck. Really good at finishing off a game, helps you play through sweepers because she makes her own creatures. She also has double strike, so she's awesome with Resilient Kenra. Indestructible is obviously super sweet, so it's just like, why would you not play multiple Kenras? Just very, very easy to get swinging with because we got like 29 creatures in the deck. Just, Kenra's crazy and will very often win the game for you when she comes down. Now, that doesn't leave us a whole lot of room for spells playing 29 creatures, but we are going to sneak in 8 spells here, and they're basically pump spells. We're going to play 4 copies of Blossoming Defense to start things off. Now, I don't think it's too crazy of a statement to say that Blossoming Defense is probably the single best pure green card in the entire format. And this deck really wants it, you know? We are very combat-oriented, so sometimes Blossoming Defense is just 1 mana for a huge blowout, you know? We want a pump spell and a counter spell all in one for just 1 mana. That's insane. Yeah, we'll take that every day. Don't play less than 4 Blossoming Defense. It's just absolutely the nuts. And to finish things off here, we're also going to play 4 copies of Appeal to Authority, another card that is the nuts, quote, the nuts. Like, this card is absolutely insane, you know? It's not unheard of for us, especially with a few creatures that we can bring back. You know, we can Eternalize or Embalm a couple of different creatures here, so it is not hard to have a relatively full board, even if we face some removal or some disadvantageous combat situations. We can still have like 3 to 5 dudes on the board super easily, and a plus, you know, anywhere between +3, +3, +5, +5, and beyond for just 1 mana is dumb. It's so dumb, especially in a deck with cards like a Dorn Pouncer and a Kenra, you know. That is unfair. That is unfair. It's nuts. So just that half of the card, the Might of the Masses half essentially, is probably worth playing, but you know, Authority is fine too. This can easily help us get through, especially against decks like mid-range, energy decks, and even control decks. They've already got their Scarab God out or whatever. This can easily create combat situations where you can just Alpha Strike just by tapping 2 of their guys. This is another one of those cards that, like, the first time you're looking through the list, you're like, huh, Appeal to Authority. You don't see that every day. But no, seriously, the deck is built in some ways to abuse Appeal to Authority, and it does it really, really well. So don't underestimate Appeal to Authority. The card is actually like a hair away from broken in this deck. Now, here are the lands in the deck. We're playing 23 of them, which may seem like a land or two too many after the curve I just brought you through, but we do need it, trust me. And if we do flood, we've got some anti-flood stuff in the deck, you know. We're trying to pay 5 mana to Eternalize a Dorn Pouncer. We're trying to pay 6 mana to Eternalize Kenra. So if we do flood out a little bit, we've got stuff to spend that mana on. Note that we stopped just short of playing playsets of Hashep Oasis, Chef Tunes. These are obviously amazing lands in this really aggressive deck where pump spells are great, you know, with all of our double strikers and stuff. I think that'll be the last time I say that in this deck tech, although maybe not, we'll see. But in any case, you know, pump spells are good in this deck, and it's awesome when our pump spells produce mana. But at the same time, they also hurt us, so we don't want too much of that, especially against, you know, Ramanap Red, and we're already losing some life to Adonto Vanguard in some games, so we don't want to go all out and play playsets, but we will make room for 3 of each because they are very good. And here's the sideboard right here. We've got a few pieces against aggro because Ramanap Red is in many ways a better pure aggro deck than we are. They're just faster. They play better creatures on the low end, so we've got to do some things against them. We got Sacred Cat to block more often. You know, we get 2 blocks off of it, gain a little bit of life, extend the game. That's nothing but good for us. We're better in the long game than them, especially if they don't get a Hazoret, if we can deny Hazoret somehow, which we can do after boards because of cards like Cast Out and Ixalan's Binding, and Binding is specifically very good against Hazoret and the Scarab God. You know, they'll never be able to play those cards again once you get one of these on the battlefield, and that is extremely good against those decks. We've also got Aethersphere Harvester against Ramanap Red, which I don't have to tell you is very good. You know, even though you only get the lifelink twice, that's sometimes all you need. You know, that's a 12-point life swing if you get, you know, if you actually get both off. And, you know, even after you don't have the energy, it still blocks really well. You know, it's got that big 5 toughness butt, so it blocks super well in that matchup too, and it flies, which is also crazy against aggro, so at least 3 copies of that. And, you know, to keep going, we've got Sky Sovereign Console Flagship, so that we can become a little bit more mid-rangey against aggro decks. You know, mid-range typically beats aggro, and Sky Sovereign is a piece that proves that, because it is absolutely broken in the aggro matchup. We crew it super easily, just bolt stuff whenever we want to, and the ETB bolt is especially important too. Now I get to talk about a Via Pashiri for just a second. Occasionally you'll see a Via Pashiri in the main deck of green-white aggro, which I somewhat support. This card can just really start getting out of control. If mid-range gets slow starts, or if you get it down early against control, it has to absorb a removal spell, or it's really, really threatening. It'll just make 3-4 creatures, and then if it actually gets to the point where you have 5 mana, you're suddenly making 7/7s for your 5 mana investment. It's an awesome mana sink, a great way to mitigate flood against mid-range decks and stuff. It's just a really decent card in this meta right now, but it's not good in any way against aggro. It's not great against combo. They really don't care. So, there are definitely decks it's bad against, but against mid-range, energy decks, control decks and stuff, the card comes down early enough, it can take over the game by itself and demands removal. I really like Ovia right now. And here are your power rankings right here. A final score of 62, pretty respectable. And the deck is very, very good at combat, especially strong in combat. Even against the Ramanap Red matchup. If we're on the play and we get a strong start, smart application of pump spells will win the day for us. And knowing what to do with our creatures. Things like a Danto Vanguard you just kind of mindlessly attack with, but being able to know when it's beneficial, even against aggro decks, to pay that for life is very important. If you're an adept aggro player, this is a deck for you because it is the smart person's aggro deck. And I really mean that. This is easily the most cerebral aggro deck on the market right now. This is the deck you play against people to prove to them that aggro isn't mindless. There's a lot of stuff that our cards do are relatively versatile, and there's a lot of questions you have to ask yourself. A Danto Vanguard, you can mindlessly swing in with that, yeah, but when's the right time to pay the 4 life? You have to ask yourself that question. Do you want it to live? Is it okay to trade? Or do you want to kill their guy? Keep your dude alive. Is it worth 4 life? Same thing with even Narnum Renegade. Do I just play this for 1 mana, you get a 1/2 Death Toucher? Is that okay in this situation? Or can I hold off and wait to activate the Revolt on it? Is that alright? Same thing with a bunch of stuff. Is it the right time to, eternalize this Resilient Kendra and get a boost, or should I hold off? There's a lot of decisions to make in this deck. So again, if you're an especially adept aggro player, this may be the deck for you. And the deck is relatively cheap to try too right now. It's only about $75, actually a little bit less than that when I put it into TCG Player. So the deck is pretty cheap for a well-performing aggro deck that has produced results in real tournaments already in this format and can only go up from here. Again, one buff to this deck or one nerf to the competition, and it is on. It is on like Michel Kwan. So seriously, give this thing a shot. It's a lot of fun to play with, especially, if you really like aggro decks, this thing is a lot more fun to play with than Ramanap Red. That deck isn't entirely mindless either. It's a lot more mindful than it gets credit for, but it doesn't have anywhere near the kind of advanced decision-making this deck can present you with sometimes. So give this thing a shot if you like having fun with aggro. And if you want to pay just $75 or less for it, check out the first link in the description, and that'll take you over to TCG Player. They help bring you content, and they're good people. Honestly, I talk to them all the time. They're decent folks. So make sure you click on that link in the description. Helps them, helps me, and helps you by bringing you the cheapest way you can buy this deck. So do that. But I'm tapped out for this one, ladies and gents. Done for now, but make sure you click the like button if you enjoyed the video. That helps me out in multiple ways, You can also sub if you're new. Hit that notification bell. Rival spoilers are coming probably the day I drop this video, actually. I'm probably missing rival spoilers right now editing this video. But anyway, rival spoilers are coming very, very soon. So subscribe if you haven't done that yet. You can also follow me on Twitter, SBMTGDev. That's important to me. Or you can throw me $1 if you feel like it. No one's forcing you to, but it would make me really happy. And it would help out the channel a lot if you threw me $1 at SBMTG. Well, patreon.com/SBMTG is the actual place you want to go. If you can't tell, I'm still slightly uncomfortable with the Patreon spiel, but the channel does need the money. So if you got $1, throw me $1, and I'll let you know what decks are coming up the day before we do them. So that's like a cheeseburger. For a cheeseburger a month, I will let you know what decks we're doing the day before they come out, which I think is a decent investment. So do it if you can, and I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love. Be kind.